My dear friend, there are moments in the spiritual life when we imagine that God's greatest command will be to speak. We expect Him to tell us to proclaim, to argue, to defend, to explain. Yet there are seasons in which heaven gives a stranger instruction. Be silent. This command offends our pride, because we have come to believe that every attack deserves an answer. Every accusation requires a defense, and every misunderstanding must be corrected. But God, who sees the end from the beginning, often knows that the battle before you cannot be won with words. The tongue is a marvelous gift, but it is also a dangerous master. Many souls have escaped temptation only to be trapped by their own explanations. They spoke when they should have prayed. They defended themselves when they should have trusted. They attempted to rescue their reputation and nearly lost their peace. Consider the mighty oak. It does not shout to prove its strength. It simply stands. Storms arrive. Winds strike. Seasons change. Yet the tree remains rooted. Its silence is not weakness. Its silence is evidence of depth. So it is with the servant of God. The world often mistakes quietness for surrender. Heaven does not. There are adversaries who feed upon reaction. They flourish when they can provoke anger, fear, or endless debate. They draw strength from your attention. Yet, when God commands silence, He is not abandoning you to defeat. He is removing nourishment from the enemy's hands. Some battles become larger only because we continue speaking into them. Imagine a fire in a dry field. Every argument becomes another gust of wind. Every defense becomes another spark. Soon, what could have died naturally becomes an inferno. The wisdom of God sometimes appears foolish because He commands us to do the opposite of what our instincts demand. He says, "Be still, trust me, do not answer. Leave this in my hands." This is not passivity, it is faith in its purest form. Faith is not merely believing God when you have evidence. Faith is remaining silent when every emotion screams for a response. Many people think spiritual maturity is measured by how much a person knows. I suspect it is more often measured by what a person refuses to say. The mature soul learns that not every truth must be spoken immediately. Not every criticism deserves a hearing. Not every opponent deserves an audience. There is a holy restraint that comes only from walking closely with God. When heaven places a guard upon your lips, it is usually because heaven is already moving where you cannot see. The chosen servant must learn this lesson repeatedly. There will be moments when false stories spread. There will be moments when motives are questioned. There will be moments when betrayal comes from unexpected places. At such times, the temptation is always the same. Explain yourself, but God may whisper, "No." Not because He does not care about justice, but because He intends to establish it Himself. The Almighty has never required human panic to accomplish divine purposes. How exhausting it is to spend one's life attempting to manage the opinions of others. The crowd changes its verdict every day. Today's praise becomes tomorrow's criticism. If you live by their approval, you will also die by their rejection. God offers a better way. He invites His children to rest in His judgment. The soul that trusts God completely discovers a remarkable freedom. It no longer feels compelled to answer every voice. It weighs thou. No longer chases every rumor. It no longer surrenders peace to every critic. Instead, it stands quietly before God. And in that quietness, strength grows. Silence before God is not emptiness. It is preparation. Roots are growing beneath the surface. Character is being formed. Wisdom is taking shape. And while others are busy defending themselves, the faithful servant is being transformed. One day, the truth emerges. It often arrives more slowly than we desire, but it arrives with a power that human arguments could never produce. God does not need your anxiety to defend His work in your life. He asks for your trust. So if you find yourself in a season where heaven seems to be saying, "Close your mouth," do not mistake that instruction for abandonment. It may be one of the greatest acts of protection you will ever receive. For sometimes, the strongest word a believer can speak is no word at all. And sometimes, the loudest declaration of faith is a heart that remains peaceful while the world demands an answer. Be still, be faithful, be patient, and let God speak where your words never could. Amen. There are moments in life when we feel an overwhelming urge to speak. We want to explain ourselves, defend our reputation, correct misunderstandings, and respond to every accusation that comes our way. It seems natural to believe that if we remain silent, others will assume we are guilty, weak, or unable to defend the truth. Yet, one of the most difficult lessons in the spiritual life is learning that not every situation requires a response. There are times when God, in His wisdom, calls His people to be silent. Silence is often misunderstood. The world tends to view it as surrender, fear, or lack of confidence. Many people believe that strength is proven by speaking louder, arguing harder, or making sure their voice is heard above everyone else's. But spiritual wisdom teaches a different lesson. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is choosing not to speak when every emotion within us demands that we do. God sees what we cannot see. He knows the hidden motives of every heart, the future consequences of every decision, and the outcome of every conflict. Because of this, His instructions may seem strange to us at times. When He says, "Be silent," it is not because He is indifferent to our struggles. It is because He understands the situation far better than we do. Many conflicts become larger, simply because people continue adding words to them. A small disagreement can grow into a bitter division. A misunderstanding can become a lasting wound. Harsh words often create consequences that cannot easily be undone. In moments of anger, frustration, or fear, people say things they later regret. God understands the power of words and the damage they can cause. His command to remain silent is often a form of protection. He is guarding us from speaking in ways that could harm ourselves or others. Trust is at the heart of this lesson. Remaining silent when falsely accused or misunderstood requires faith. It means believing that God is capable of handling the situation without our constant involvement. It means trusting that truth does not need our panic to survive. God has a way of bringing hidden things into the light at the proper time. He can defend His children far better than they can defend themselves. When we insist on controlling every conversation and correcting every criticism, we may actually be demonstrating a lack of trust in His ability to work. Silence also creates space for peace. Constantly reacting to every negative word can drain our energy and steal our joy. We become trapped in an endless cycle of defense and explanation. But when we place our confidence in God, we are freed from the burden of managing everyone's opinion. We learn to rest in the knowledge that God's judgment matters more than the approval of people. The person who obeys God's call to silence is not giving up. That person is choosing faith over fear. wisdom over impulse, and trust over anxiety. In quietness, character grows stronger, patience deepens, spiritual maturity develops. What appears to be weakness on the surface often becomes a source of great strength within. Sometimes, God's most powerful work happens when His people stop striving, stop arguing, and simply trust Him. In those moments, silence becomes more than the absence of words. It becomes an expression of confidence that God is present, God is working, and God will accomplish what no human defense ever could. Silence is rarely celebrated in the world we live in. From an early age, we are taught to speak up, defend ourselves, make our opinions known, and ensure that others recognize our value. We often associate strength with visibility and power with having the last word. When someone attacks us, our instinct is to respond. When someone misunderstands us, we feel compelled to explain. When someone challenges us, we want to prove them wrong. Because of this, silence can feel uncomfortable, even frightening. Yet there is a deeper truth that many people overlook. Silence is not always weakness. In many cases, it is one of the greatest signs of strength a person can possess. True strength is not measured by how loudly someone speaks, but by how well they control themselves. Anyone can react in a moment of anger. Anyone can lash out when wounded. Anyone can answer insult with insult and criticism with criticism. Such reactions require very little discipline. The greater challenge is remaining calm when emotions are high, remaining peaceful when others seek to provoke you, and remaining silent when every part of you wants to defend yourself. This kind of restraint is not weakness. It is evidence of inner strength. A person who is secure in God does not feel the need to win every argument. They do not feel compelled to correct every false statement or answer every accusation. They understand that their worth does not depend on public approval, because their confidence is rooted in something greater than human opinion. They are free from the exhausting need to constantly defend themselves. This freedom allows them to remain calm. While others are consumed by conflict, silence also demonstrates wisdom. Not every battle deserves to be fought. Not every disagreement requires a response. There are situations where speaking only adds fuel to the fire. A careless word can turn a minor disagreement into a major conflict. A defensive response can prolong an argument that would have ended on its own. Wisdom recognizes that some victories are not achieved by speaking, but by refusing to engage. The strong person understands the difference between a battle worth fighting and a distraction designed to steal peace and focus. Nature itself offers examples of this principle. Consider a great mountain. It stands firm through storms, wind, and changing seasons. It does not need to announce its strength, because its stability speaks for itself. In the same way, a spiritually mature person does not need constant validation. Their character speaks louder than their words. Their patience reveals their strength. Their calmness in difficult situations becomes a testimony to the work God is doing within them. Many people mistake silence for fear because they do not understand its purpose. They assume that if someone does not respond, that person has nothing to say. Yet often, the opposite is true. The strongest individuals are frequently those who have learned when not to speak. They understand that words carry power, and that power must be used wisely. They know that not every thought needs to be expressed, and not every challenge deserves attention. God often develops this kind of strength in his people through seasons of testing. He teaches them to trust him instead of reacting impulsively. He teaches them to value peace over proving themselves right. He teaches them that self-control is greater than self-expression. As this lesson takes root, they discover a remarkable truth. Strength is not found in dominating every conversation, but in mastering one's own spirit. When a person learns this lesson, silence becomes more than the absence of words. It becomes a reflection of confidence, wisdom, and faith. It reveals a heart that trusts God enough to remain calm, even when circumstances invite reaction. Such silence is not weakness at all. It is strength in one of its purest and most powerful forms. One of the most overlooked truths in life is that some battles become larger simply because we keep speaking into them. What begins as a small disagreement can grow into a serious conflict. What starts as a misunderstanding can turn into division and bitterness. Often, the problem itself is not as destructive as the endless reactions it produces. Every response invites another response. Every argument creates another argument. Before long, people find themselves trapped in a struggle that has become far greater than the issue that started it. Human nature pushes us toward reaction. When someone criticizes us, we want to defend ourselves. When someone spreads false information, we want to correct every detail. When we feel misunderstood, we desperately want others to see our side of the story. These desires are understandable, but they can also become dangerous. In our effort to solve a problem, we may unknowingly give it more attention, more energy, and more life than it deserves. Imagine a small fire beginning in a dry field. If left alone, it might burn out quickly. But if strong winds continue to blow through it, the flames spread further and further. In many situations, our words become those winds. Every angry reply, every emotional explanation, and every attempt to win an argument can keep the conflict alive. What could have faded away naturally becomes stronger because we continue feeding it. This is why wisdom often calls for restraint. There are moments when silence accomplishes more than speaking ever could. Choosing not to react immediately creates space for emotions to settle and for clearer thinking to emerge. It allows us to see the situation from a broader perspective, rather than through the lens of hurt feelings or wounded pride. Many conflicts lose their power when they are not constantly fueled by fresh responses. God understands this principle far better than we do. He sees how easily people become entangled in endless disputes. He knows how quickly words can escalate tension. Sometimes his instruction is surprisingly simple: stop talking and trust him. This can feel difficult because silence often seems passive. We fear that if we do not respond, the other person will win. We worry that our silence will be interpreted as weakness or agreement. Yet God often works in ways that do not depend on our constant participation. There is great strength in refusing to be drawn into every battle. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every criticism requires a defense. Some people are not seeking understanding. They are seeking reaction. They thrive on conflict and gain satisfaction from provoking others. When we respond to every challenge they present, we become participants in a cycle that never truly ends. Wisdom recognizes when engagement is productive and when it is simply feeding the problem. Silence also protects our hearts. Constant arguments drain emotional energy, rob us of peace, and distract us from the things that truly matter. A person consumed by conflict, often loses focus on their purpose, relationships, and spiritual growth. By stepping away from unnecessary battles, we preserve the strength needed for the responsibilities and callings God has placed before us. This does not mean ignoring every problem or avoiding every difficult conversation. Some situations require honest discussion and courageous truth. However, there is a difference between addressing an issue wisely and becoming trapped in endless conflict. Spiritual maturity involves knowing the difference. It involves recognizing when words are helpful and when they are harmful. Many of life's greatest victories are not won through louder arguments or longer explanations. They are won through patience, restraint, and trust. When we stop feeding every conflict with our words, we often discover that the battle loses much of its power. What once seemed overwhelming begins to fade. Peace returns, clarity emerges, and we realize that sometimes the most effective response is not another argument, but the wisdom to remain silent and allow God to work. One of the greatest struggles people face is the desire to be understood, accepted, and approved by others. Deep within the human heart is a longing to be valued. We want people to think well of us, appreciate our efforts, and recognize our intentions. There is nothing inherently wrong with wanting healthy relationships or seeking respect. However, problems arise when the opinions of others become the foundation of our identity and peace. When our sense of worth depends upon human approval, we place ourselves on an emotional roller coaster that never truly stops. Human opinion is constantly changing. The same people who praise you today may criticize you tomorrow. Those who celebrate your success may question your motives when circumstances change. Public approval is often unpredictable and unstable. If you build your confidence upon it, your peace will rise and fall with every compliment and every criticism. You will find yourself constantly trying to manage how others perceive you. And this pursuit can become exhausting. Many people spend years attempting to protect their reputation at all costs. They feel compelled to explain every decision, answer every accusation, and correct every misunderstanding. They believe that if they can simply say the right words, everyone will finally understand them. Yet experience repeatedly teaches a different lesson. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, there will always be some people who choose not to understand. No matter how sincerely you act, there will always be individuals who question your motives. Trying to satisfy everyone is a task that no human being can accomplish. This is why trusting God's judgment is so important. God sees what no person can fully see. Human beings observe actions, but God sees intentions. People often make conclusions based on limited information, but God possesses complete understanding. He knows the private sacrifices that others never notice. He sees the tears shed in secret, the prayers offered in faith, and the struggles endured with perseverance. While people judge according to appearances, God judges according to truth. When a person truly begins to trust God's judgment, a remarkable sense of freedom emerges. They no longer feel enslaved by the opinions of the crowd. They stop measuring their worth by how many people approve of them. They stop allowing criticism to define their identity. This does not mean they become careless or arrogant. Rather, they learn to place the highest value on God's opinion rather than the constantly changing opinions of others. Trusting God also helps us endure misunderstanding with greater peace. There will be moments in life when people misinterpret our actions, or question our intentions. These experiences can be painful because everyone desires fairness, yet constantly fighting for human approval often creates more frustration than peace. When we place our confidence in God, we recognize that His undoing is complete, even when others misunderstand us. There is great comfort in knowing that God's justice is perfect. Human judgment is often influenced by emotions, assumptions, and incomplete knowledge. God's judgment is never distorted. He knows every fact, every motive, and every hidden detail. Because of this, we can trust Him with situations that seem unfair. We do not have to carry the burden of proving ourselves to every person we encounter. We can rest in the confidence that God sees the truth. This trust transforms the way we respond to criticism and opposition. Instead of reacting with fear or desperation, we respond with calmness and wisdom. Instead of becoming consumed by what others think, we focus on living faithfully before God. Our energy is no longer spent chasing approval, but pursuing obedience. The more deeply this truth settles into the heart, the more peace it produces. A person who trusts God's judgment discovers a stability that circumstances cannot easily shake. Praise no longer inflates them, and criticism no longer destroys them. They understand that human opinions are temporary, but God's truth is eternal. In that understanding, they find freedom, confidence, and lasting peace that no amount of public approval could ever provide. Some of the most important work God does in a person's life happens during seasons that appear quiet, slow, and uneventful. These are the periods when nothing seems to be changing on the surface. Prayers appear unanswered. Progress feels invisible. Opportunities seem delayed. It can be tempting to believe that God is distant or inactive during such times. Yet the truth is often the exact opposite. Quiet seasons are frequently the moments when God is doing His deepest and most lasting work. Human beings naturally focus on what they can see. We are encouraged by visible results, immediate answers, and obvious signs of progress. When these things are absent, we often become impatient. We want movement, action, and evidence that our efforts are producing results. However, God is not limited to working in ways that are immediately visible. Much of His work takes place beneath the surface, where the human eye cannot observe it. Nature provides a powerful illustration of this truth. Consider a seed planted in the ground. After it is buried, there is often no visible change for a period of time. To an observer, it may seem as though nothing is happening, yet beneath the soil, an incredible process has already begun. Roots are forming, growth is taking place, preparation is occurring for the day when the plant will emerge into the light. If the seed could speak, it might feel forgotten during those hidden days. In reality, it is undergoing the very process necessary for future growth. The spiritual life often follows the same pattern. God uses quiet seasons to develop roots that cannot be seen. He strengthens faith. When there is no visible evidence, He teaches patience when answers seem delayed. He builds character through circumstances that require endurance. These lessons are not always exciting, but they are essential. A strong spiritual foundation is rarely built during moments of comfort and ease. It is often formed during periods of waiting, trusting, and persevering. Many people desire the blessings of growth without the process that produces it. They want strength without challenges, wisdom without experience, and maturity without testing. Yet, God understands that lasting transformation requires time. He is far more concerned with who we are becoming than with how quickly we achieve visible success. Quiet seasons provide the environment where this transformation can take place. These seasons also teach dependence on God. When everything is moving according to our plans, it is easy to rely on our own abilities. But when progress slows and answers are not immediately available, we are reminded of our need for Him. We learn to trust His timing rather than our own. We learn to walk by faith rather than by sight. This kind of trust strengthens the soul in ways that constant activity never could. There is also a hidden protection in quiet seasons. Sometimes God delays opportunities because He is preparing us to handle them wisely. Sometimes He closes doors because He sees dangers we cannot see. Sometimes He allows periods of stillness because He knows we need deeper growth before stepping into the next stage of our journey. What feels like delay may actually be preparation. What feels like silence may actually be divine instruction. History and experience both show that people who endure quiet seasons faithfully often emerge stronger than before. They gain wisdom, patience, humility, and resilience. They develop a deeper relationship with God because they have learned to seek Him even when circumstances offer little encouragement. Their faith becomes less dependent on visible results and more rooted in the character of God Himself. When the season eventually changes and new opportunities appear, they are ready. The roots developed in private support, the growth that becomes visible in public. The lessons learned in silence guide them through future challenges. The strength formed in hidden places enables them to stand firm when greater responsibilities arrive. For this reason, quiet seasons should not be viewed as wasted time. They are often sacred periods of preparation. Though little may seem to be happening on the surface, God is actively working where human eyes cannot see. He is shaping character, deepening faith, and preparing His people for purposes greater than they currently understand. What appears to be stillness may, in fact, be one of the most productive seasons of spiritual growth a person will ever experience.